Welcome to The Sensitive Warrior, where feeling everything is your superpower. Join me as we dive into an exciting and uplifting podcast that celebrates the unique strengths of highly sensitive people. Hi, I'm Doreen Lang. I'm author of Embracing Venus, Achieve a Life Lit Up for Highly Sensitive People, and a coach committed to helping highly sensitive people thrive. I'm excited to welcome my guest today, Todd Breitenstein, creator of The Grateful Garden, where he does something very unique. Todd creates beautiful therapeutic landscapes. You'll be inspired about how he embraces nature and harnesses its power to enhance well-being. Welcome.
Thanks, Doreen.
So happy to have you here today.
Exciting.
This is really wonderful because people, this is just so unique and so special. So I'm excited. But let me just dive in first to the first question I have for you. How did you first discover that spending time in nature helped actually to reduce your anxiety as a highly sensitive person?
It's really been my whole life where I've just always been fascinated by being in nature, and it wasn't really ever just this big light bulb that went off that said, hey, this is where you're healing, this is where you're at peace. It just is how I was. And then at some point I realized that I feel everything. I feel other people's emotions, I feel other people's just stress, anxiety, and my own. And I became, very aware that when I went to nature, that was gone. I can't say exactly when. I just know that, I feel squirrely sometimes.
Did you say like squirrely?
Like squirrely, I'm like, I just get weird, and I get kind of this underlying, I don't want to say stress because that's too strong of a word, but I just feel like a uneasiness. And then I'm like, oh, I need to go for a hike, or I need to go for a walk, or I need to go take a run. And then I find myself in the woods and it's gone. And then I'm driving home and I feel right again. And I'm like, oh, wow, your intuition was totally spot on that you've been too far away from nature for too long. And so now I just know when I've been away too long that I need to go take a hike or go hug a tree or just be somewhere in a garden or just connect. Even watching videos of nature or other people talking about inspirational things in nature. There's YouTube and podcasts that are on that sort of topic where I can just see. I love PBS. I love watching all the nature shows on there. Even that helps. It's not the same.
No.
But it's still, it just gets my curiosity going again, and I learn, and I always want to be learning new things about all of creation and just it's so beautiful. Nature and animals and their resilience and how they're just always forgiving each other, and they just work together, and there's just this innate harmony about not worrying about the struggle that life really is, and especially in a forest. If you really take the time to look at a forest, you'll see it's not easy. Everybody is constantly under
Survival,
stress.
right? Survival.
And yet they don't complain.
Yeah, they don't
They
complain.
just give, and they give to us, and so that's changed my whole entire outlook. Once I started actually communicating with the forest and offering gratitude and telling the forest how important it is to me and how much I love their unconditional service. They don't ask for anything in return, and yet they give us the air that we breathe and the colors that we see and just our food, for that matter. Everything is tied to it. So
It's so interesting. You said you feel squirrely being in too much. COVID really did that to people. That really kept people from going out, that they were fearful, to go out. And I guess I would describe it as antsy, but it's interesting how I'm saying ants and squirrels. We're even using these.
I'm not going to lie, I thought about it, that if I said squirrely, some people might be like, oh, it's squirrely, in the woods.
and you were.
Yeah, I know. I chose that on purpose.
So when you talk about connecting with nature, impacting your overall health, is that something that I know as a highly sensitive person, nature absolutely grounds us, right? When things just get over the top or feel over the top, even if it's with people. stepping aside and heading outside, right? So how would you kind of describe, I don't know, something that you've done, maybe for clients, where you've kind of helped them kind of open up and kind of embrace this?
Interesting. Actually, it's one of my clients who actually kind of solidified it for me. We did this ecological restoration project on the banks of a pond. And so it was highly regulated, and everything that we had to plant was...
Was this local?
Yes, yeah. And it was very meticulous, the order of how everything had to go. And then at one point, it's a 3-part condo building, so there was multiple owners involved, and one of the owner's mothers came out and said, wow, the energy is completely changed out here. And yeah, exactly. That's what I did. I was like, wait, she notices that and is willing to say it out loud. And that was like, because I'm thinking these things all the time, that every plant has a place, and when you put it in, the energy starts to change. Like the healing happens within the landscape when you're using the right plant in the right place, and it's chosen for its inherent value to the landscape, as opposed to just being ornamental. There's a shift that happens, and you could feel it. Now, this land had been disturbed quite a bit, and it was traumatic, and so there was a lot of just deep breathing that the land was like, thank you, thank you, thank you for bringing me back to where I was and what I'm capable of being. And that really shifted things for me a lot. I know it's so simple, but in that same space, then I started realizing that each plant has its own energy field. Each plant has its own individual characteristics that are unique to it, and there's healing properties within each plant. Some we actually ingest for medicine, but if you can take a leap of faith with me, you can see that you don't even have to ingest the plant. Just being in its space is medicine in and of itself. So you can ask the plant, hey, I need some of your medicine right now. If you have the awareness to know which plants are doing what things, you can interact with them on that level. Everything is energy.
Right.
We're energy, they're energy, and it's always flowing. You don't have to eat it in order to receive it if you're willing to open yourself up to that.
So when you started talking with me, you talked about how, as a highly sensitive person, you could kind of feel the emotions of other people. Would you agree with me, because I feel really strongly about this? Ever since I was little, my mom, when I grew up, my mother had, in the dining room, she had a tray, and it was all white stones in the corner of the room. It just kind of was a cool shape. And she had the white stones, and she had plants on them, so that drainage, right? She'd have plants on them, and they were really cool. And when I was little, they were this high, and I was able to see them all, and I learned all about the different plants, because, Mama, what's that? Mama, what's that? You know, and I got to learn about it. I got to love them, and I would stand next to her, and I would see her kind of work it, right? Snip off the geranium when it got a little yellowed and all that. And I thought to myself, she just knows, right? She just knows. So as I got older, when my kids were born, I had them I just put a little bit of rocks around, and I said to my daughter, Rosie, that's yours, and Trav, that's yours. And they were so excited. They had their own little gardens. And to this day, they're always like awe-inspired by nature. You know, it starts so young, right? So I'm sharing that fun story, but what I'm really getting at is, even as an adult now, with my plants in my house, I'll walk by, and it's not that I think they're like, I don't want to laugh at this because it probably is true, but sometimes I will see that they're sad, right? They're like reaching up. They're reaching up, and I know that means they're waiting for the rain, right? I left them alone too long, and they're reaching up because they're thirsty, and their leaves are cupped in such a way, right, that they want to receive the water to take it down to the roots. But even further than that, you can almost, you know, when I'm visiting someone, I'll tend to just, when they're not looking, kind of break off the unhealthy so the healthy can flourish. But you can almost feel, right? So when you're working with people and you're working with landscapes, you probably, tell us about a time you've kind of walked through and just said, this is like an upsetting garden. You know, the energy here isn't doing the right thing for itself.
I'm actually just thinking houseplants, because I had a houseplant that was too long recently. It's a vining, I think it's a philodendron type, like long, and it was just too much where I had it, and so I cut it. And the next day when I came back, it was so sad. It was totally drooped. Like maybe it was a couple of days later, but it had totally drooped down, and I realized that I hadn't like told it why I was doing what it was that I was going to do, which was that I just kind of like
chopped it.
Yeah, and so.
And you think you hurt its feelings?
Oh, I know I did, and you could. It was totally slumped and like sad, and so I held it and I told it, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you that, you know, you just were too big for this space, and I needed to, you know, keep you more tidy for me, and it was totally back. Yeah, it didn't even take 24 hours, and it was back to being full of vigor again. It's gonna drop some leaves. It totally was like, it was like, no, you can't. It turned a bunch of leaves yellow, and it was shocked.
It was
really
shocked.
was. But
it was shocked.
So you're not wrong in what you're saying. Like they've actually done all kinds of studies on this. Like this isn't just me making this stuff up or you having like.
There's so much more, right?
Oh,
there's so much
so
more.
deep where they've gone with the studies of the interactions with plants, like even to the point where if you move away from a plant, they still feel, once you've been with them, your connection to them. Like actually, this is a great example. So in my office building, there was one of the tenants had this money tree, and the money tree got really big. And it was so tall that he couldn't keep it in his office anymore. And so he asked if it could be moved to the foyer, and where the ceilings are really high.
Sure.
And so we moved it to the foyer, and the office manager is a plant lady. She's nuts about plants. There's plants everywhere in the building. And so, but you could tell it wasn't happy. Like you could totally tell that it missed the owner,
Yeah, you
right?
kicked it out, right? You kicked it out. It was all alone.
Yeah, and then, so this is amazing, actually. This is a perfect example. So he, then within a couple months of us moving it out there, he moved out of the building and left it behind. And the weekend he moved out, on that Monday morning, the plant was totally fell over. This is a big money tree,
and
like
it was watered.
8 feet tall. It had been, maybe, if anything, they were overwatering it. Literally, it fell over in its pot, and he had moved out of the building. So I came in, and like the receptionist was like, Todd, because she knows like that I would help, and she's like, the plant is all fallen over, and we had this conversation about money, and then it hit me that he had moved out, and the tree was protesting that he left. Wow. So we stood it back up. I prayed on it or gave it energy and told it it was okay, that the new owners of the building and everything was going to be okay. And I got to tell you, it's so happy now. Like you can just see that it's like, okay, fine.
So the money plant is supposed to be helping, you know, harmonize and
Yes.
bring in wealth and.
Yes. But the new ownership of the building, like this all happened within a certain time. And I said, I can't take it, but I have resistance to money. Like me and money are funny, right? And I'm like, you don't want me taking care of the thing. And this is a huge conversation that we all had about this plant. The new ownership of the building, the money has changed. Like they're investors, whereas the previous owner, it was just kind of like, it was like a hobby sort of for them. Right? Like they just had, like they weren't worried about money in any way, but the new ownership is like, we got to get every penny out of this place. God, I hope they don't see this. Because I might be projecting all of this on them. I don't think I am.
So you're saying that the new owners that came in thrived because
no,
of
the
this
new,
tree?
Well, they will. They're going to, because we straightened the tree out. Right, exactly. But like, I swear it all coincided with the tenant moving, the new ownership who's more resistant to money. Like they're worried about the building and the outcome of the financial investment that they've made in the building.
Wow.
And the tree is like, yeah, no, like I'm gonna protest this and say, I'm sad because my caretaker left, and the new ownership is more tight with money, and you're not supposed to be tight with money it's like everything. It's like, I'm gonna go to, this is back to nature, right? And it's relevant to people who are highly sensitive. if you go into the woods and there's a bunch of bugs, right? The more attention you put on the bugs, the more bugs that come. So if you can just let go, I've literally had this swarm of bugs going around me, and I'm like trying to get them to go away, like stopping, and I'm like pouting like this, you're ruining my walk. Like, don't you know, like I'm here to be like.
How aggravating. Taking
a deep breath and then just standing still, and they go away, right? And they leave.
It's like that group you and I had, we were facilitating once about surrendering, right? And it's not fighting it, not saying
so
no, it's
this
just
is the
accepting,
lesson.
right?
This
Just
is
accepting.
the exact lesson. We had talked about this at the meeting, and literally that week, I'm experiencing this distress over the bugs, and I know better, right? Because we talk, like I know,
We
like
know
the
to
more
surrender,
you resist,
right?
I know to surrender. And I wasn't doing it, but I'd stand there and they would leave me alone. And then I'd keep walking, and then they would come back. And as soon as I finally let go, like you're saying,
but it's that
no
whole
more
thing,
bugs.
right? It's that whole thing, that expression where energy goes, where intention flows, right?
Yes.
So you're putting intention and you're putting thought on it, and the bugs, and you're almost like calling them in, right?
Yes.
And it's about just kind of doing your own thing and letting them do their own thing. And next thing you know, you're not, energetically, you're not pulling them in.
Right, so if we're gonna put this for people that are highly sensitive, it's the same thing. If there are certain experiences that are really causing you duress, then to let go of that causing you duress is saying before you go into the experience that I'm going to let go of this, that I'm not going to put resistance into this. I know that energetically it's going to charge me up, and that there's going to be this exchange that I have to deal with, but it doesn't have to be that way, right? It's your energy and your energy alone, and allowing it to just be with you.
I know, I love that.
It's easier said than done.
Right,
but
it's easier said than done.
But the bugs were a perfect,
no,
all of a sudden I was like slapping myself in the face, like you know better than to put all your attention onto how much the bugs are annoying you.
Right.
And it goes into everything that we do.
Everything that we do.
Yeah, traffic, making the coffee grind spill like first thing in the morning, and you could be like, I got like, or you could just laugh and be like, oh, the coffee ground spilled, and just and go on with your day. But
not bringing in anything else to you.
And you just keep putting more and more into it, and the more you put into it, it just keeps going that way.
And as a sensitive, it just feels as though it can just feel just so overwhelming. It just feels like it's just too much. I went for a walk yesterday afternoon at the Mass Audubon in Marshfield and just kind of walked around there a little bit. I love this time of year where it has that kind of a musky smell of the wet leaves, and you just really feel the seasons change. You can like feel that energy, you know?
Yep.
And I was thinking about our conversation today, and I was thinking about how, like what role do seasons or weather play in your connection to nature?
My favorite thing to do was walk in the woods in a light rain.
Light rain.
Or rain in general. It's so interesting. And I've also found that the rain, sound of the rain hides us. So you're much more likely to encounter things like deer or...
Oh, right, of course. I hadn't really thought about that.
I've been 8 feet from a deer in the woods in the rain because they didn't hear me coming. And come around a path and then just be standing there and being like, oh, hello, deer. Nice to see you, right? And then they're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Are you really that close to me? And then they run, but it's the deer as the cover.
Very cool.
I'm super, like the moon cycles, I get weird before the moon, but even still, like this is something I keep trying to teach myself, is it's like the resistance. If I say that the coming of a full moon makes me weird, then
you start getting weird before the full moon.
Exactly. So I've been trying to change that. But the pull of it, the water in our cells, and if the moon is moving the ocean, it's clearly moving me. So seasonally, the day length, I definitely miss the sun. I don't like getting up when it's dark outside. I don't like the flipping of a light switch to be, so it ties it, but I find that every season in Massachusetts, we're so lucky because it's so good.
And then let's talk about the ocean, because on the South Shore, I think that's one of the reasons why we're here, right? I mean, I'm from the city in Boston, And it's always been a dream to live by the sea. I think that's a great expression. You're lucky enough if you live by the sea or something like that. You're lucky enough. But the waves, right? Going to the beach, the whole cleansing, you know, I think as a highly sensitive, I think so many of my clients, honestly, when I'm going in to take them through a Reiki session or a guided meditation, one of the biggest, most deepest feelings they'll have is when I take them to the beach. And I start them out where they literally come out of their car and they take their shoes off and they step on those soft pine needles onto the boardwalk. And I take them down into the ocean, and then I have them just stand there. And, you know, they're on my Reiki table, they're relaxing, the only thing covered their eyes, so they're just relaxing. But, and I do play the music with the waves
Nice.
to just help them just get there. And then I'm quiet and let them have their own thoughts, of course. But it almost feels like a cleansing, doesn't it? The waves, right? Kind of pulling our energy in and then tossing it, cleaning it, doing its thing, and then bringing it back, right?
Nice. Love it.
Yeah.
Yes. A new thought with every wave.
A new thought with every wave. Yeah, yeah.
Just, again, with the letting go, bring in a new thought, new inspiration, and then let it go. So it's such a beautiful expression of the impermanence. And when we move to impermanence and realize that nothing is ever static, it's always changing, ourselves included, and accepting that, because we put resistance towards change. It's very difficult for us. And so...
Why is that? I mean, I think as a highly sensitive person myself, and the clients that I help and I serve, they're in fear of something else happening next. And the whole surrendering, I work with them on to just, because sometimes, most often when you do, right? When you do relax and go with it or try it, something happens that you weren't even expecting, that comes in so much better and more exciting or enjoyable, because you hadn't thought of that because you're trying to control so much here. None of the gates are open to allow it to come in from here, right?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's ego. My ego wants to be in control. It wants to know the outcomes of everything. And so change is hard for it. It doesn't want to, because it's uncertain. There's two things I know that the ego doesn't like: love and God, because it can't control them. And so it will self-sabotage love because it can't control it, and God's out because you can't see it. And so that's been my experience anyway.
That's interesting, yeah. Yeah.
Self-sabotaging a great relationship is pretty common. I mean, not just me. I mean, but I've done it. I've definitely done it. I'm you know, I think a lot of is feeling so much. It's
Feeling
hard
so much.
to know that you're not going to get overwhelmed. And so if you just have some consistency to what you're doing on a daily basis, I think that helps ease that sensitivity, because it's more predictable. And so we want things to be more predictable, because then it makes it easier to handle them, right?
Right.
But all I know is every time I draw a circle around myself and feel like the circle gets bigger, more information is ready to be had. Every time I say it, I got it figured out, the universe laughs at me and is like, yeah, you got it figured out, do you? Okay.
Yeah, try this.
Yeah, exactly.
Here comes this.
Yeah, but it's beautiful when you let it be, and it's like, you don't fight it, but it takes a good amount of practice to let go, and to, especially fear, and especially anxiety that it results around going into places and feeling overwhelmed.
Right.
And
right.
so I know that if I go into nature, I'm not going to be overwhelmed, because it's predictable, but it's completely random. And so I love to look for patterns.
It is.
Like, that's one of my very favorite things about going into nature, is just looking for patterns. Patterns within the creation itself. So like pine cones have patterns, but the patterns to the way the water flows, patterns for the way that the tree grows, patterns within the pathway, how roots are. All of these things deepen my connection to the forest or to where I go. One of my very, very favorite things is pine needle puddles. So when it rains, puddles form in the pathways, and we're predominantly white pine forests in Massachusetts, and so our paths have lots of pine needles on them. And when the puddle forms, the pine needles float. And then when the puddle goes away, they land in this completely random, like incredible pattern of pine needles. And like, if you're the first person to go through, this is one of the reasons why I love the rain, is that I get to see these things. It's beautiful. It's like as good as any painting you could ever see. Yeah. I try to take photos of it for my artwork, but it doesn't turn out as well as what you see when you're there.
So true, even with our great cameras. You know, I have a couple clients, they have a really hard time with the monkey mind, right? Their thoughts are jumping from branch to branch to branch to branch. Here's another tree example, right? Here we go, talking about trees. But yeah. And I'll make a funny little thing. I'll put, this is my prescription, like I'm a doctor. I joke, of course. Yeah. My prescription. I put a piece of paper and I say, walk in the woods and stop and look at everything in detail. And put a little story in terms of a description around that. For 2 or 3, 4, 5 minutes, just go. And what happens, right, is they focus on what's at hand, and they start to really look closely at it, and they're climbing out of their mind, and their thoughts, they just disappear. Their worries, their concerns, they completely disappear by taking the time and just looking at that pine cone and looking at the bark and looking at the way that huge pine must have fallen over with that big root flat. How did that happen? How did that stay in with such a tall tree? Yeah. And they'll tell me later that, you know, that they've seen things that they hadn't seen before.
That's awesome.
And they feel so much more relaxed. And the challenge, right, it's a wonderful alternative because so many people will reach for food from stress or drinking, whatever, gambling, they'll shop, they'll go on their phone. Yeah. All the isms, and of course now with social media. And I do know for a fact, because it's research I've done for my book as well as for this podcast, is people don't realize this, and I bet you do, is when people are on their phones, that energy that is transmitted from your phone and what's you are being pulled in, and it absolutely lowers your vibrational energy. It lowers your energy. So sometimes you're on it for a while and you wonder why you kind of can't get off the chair. Nothing happened to you. You may have even been watching a pretty good video, but all of a sudden your energy is just gone, and there's nothing more rejuvenating, right, than to put it down and go where?
The woods, or anywhere, just into your yard, or any space that's not attached to the phone. I can see that. I can totally see that.
Yeah.
One of my when you're walking in the woods, the path is varied, right? So there's roots, there's rocks, there's ups, there's downs. The path is just like most lives in general, right? But when you're walking, you have to think about where your feet are going to fall.
Right.
So you're paying closer attention to
each step.
And that forces you to come out of the monkey mind, because you can't be thinking about all of the tasks that you have to do.
Right.
So now you're there. If you take a friend with you and you get into conversation, you might have the opportunity to laugh.
Right.
If you're walking and your mind is not on all the daily tasks and you're focused on your feet, and you come out of that space and then you start laughing. Yeah. So much therapy in that. It's
so much therapy in that.
Ridiculous, like how much healing comes into you.
Oh yeah. Laughter. We can't laugh enough. It's just incredible, the power and the health of it. But as we're wrapping up here, maybe just real quickly, you could tell us, you know, what is the work you love doing for people right now? What is the work that you enjoy doing?
Anything I can do to help someone just connect to the reality that everything is one and all things are connected. We're connected to the things that we do in our yard. We're connected to the things we do on our phone. All of life is connected. Our thoughts are connected. Our energy is connected.
And you're helping them create these landscapes with all this in mind.
Yes. So that way, when I enter the space with them, they know that it's not just that I'm going to put in a pretty garden, that the intention is that we're going to talk our way through this process so that you become connected the way that I am, which can help you then open doors to so much. There's so much that you can receive unconsciously and consciously.
Highly sensitive people could just use so much of your help.
Exactly.
So much else. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in to this fascinating conversation with Todd and myself. Be sure to join us for our next podcast. We'll be introducing Phyllis Simonetta. This will be a fantastic discussion. And if you're ready to embrace your sensitivity and create lasting change, please reach out to me at Doreen@blossomhealingstudio.com. And I'd be happy to speak with you. I offer Tune In for Clarity call. We can just kind of go through what you're feeling and what you're thinking. And if you're interested in connecting with Todd, reach out to me still at Doreen@blossomhealingstudio.com, and I will connect you with Todd. So in the meantime, until next time, feeling everything is your superpower, embrace it and make it work for you. Thanks so much.